Hi, Ed Marks here, host of Digital Voices webinar. Really excited today to talk about medicine in the virtual age. I can't think of a better guest than Heidi West from Zoom. And speaking of Zoom, we probably should have used Zoom as our platform so we could ensure that we had really good visuals and also just to complement the overall talk. But I'm really excited. We really have three objectives. One is to gain industry perspective from one of the giants in the industry, playing in the space of virtual care, learning some best practices across payer and provider industries, and ideate on the future of virtual care. One of the reasons we love doing live sessions is we want to interact with you. So I think you all know by now how to do this, but you can ask a question. I'll look at the questions and try to get in as many as we can. So it's very interactive. So if we say something that you think is provocative or you have provocative question, hey, jump right in. And like I mentioned, we can definitely cover it. So this is for you, and we look forward to that interaction. So again, welcome my guest Heidi. Heidi and I go back a little ways when she first worked at Cisco, and you can see her bio on the slides. But we were already talking a lot of really innovative, actually remote care things way back when. And it was a lot of fun, and we accomplished a lot of things together. And also she helped me with some swimming. So as I was learning, doing a lot of triathlons and sort of things, she had been a collegiate swimmer and was very helpful to that. One last thing before we bring in Heidi, and that is the other reason we have Heidi speaking with us today is she's actually one of our featured speakers for our Digital Next virtual conference. And we may have a slide at the end that gives you some detail, but June 17th at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And it's a CDO conference for CDOs by CDOs. There's no vendors, no sponsors. It's all CDO driven. It's all pure content to help you level up in your game and for your organization. So really excited to have Heidi come, and she'll be speaking on things different than what we're speaking about today. So let's jump right in. Heidi, I will ask you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you end up at Zoom leading healthcare?
Yeah, thanks, Ed. And I cannot believe I can't make this work. I do this all day, every day. So I hate that I can't get on video, but it's great to see you and talk to you today. I think first and foremost, I just want to do a quick happy International Nurses Day is today, and need to show my love for all the nurses around the world who are in the front lines every day. But as far as who I am, I've been really fortunate to dedicate most of my career to working alongside the healthcare industry and IT. I have a little over 25 years of experience spanning across hardware, consulting, software, big data, cloud, and now back in collaboration. So I've been able to stitch together a pretty comprehensive understanding of the industry. I wrote a small article, a little paper a couple years ago on LinkedIn talking about the intersections of business and personal life. And really my passion for improving healthcare comes from my mom's battle with cancer. And, I think with the business of healthcare being so personal for all of us, we have something that drives us, and have just been really grateful and fortunate to be in this industry this long and meet people like yourself.
No, that's great. So again, thank you for being part of Digital Voices webinar. So tell us the Zoom story. So I think most of us, all of us, already familiar with Zoom prior to the pandemic, but certainly things just really, at least from my perspective, seem to accelerate for Zoom, especially in healthcare. So tell us a little bit about the Zoom story.
Yeah, for those who aren't familiar, Zoom really is a video-first unified communications platform. And I think the reason that matters so much is because with video in mind, it creates the simplicity and the reliability and all the things that people came to know and appreciate about Zoom, I think, this past year. We really did become known this past year as connecting the world in many ways. And I know that sounds a little broad, but it was, we had to shift overnight. Enterprises created work from home overnight. Our educators, students went home in many cases for spring break, having no idea they weren't coming back. My husband is a high school history teacher, and I was just so proud of how he adopted and stayed connected to his kids when he didn't realize he wasn't going to see them again that year. And, you know, in healthcare, having to abruptly shift to a virtual visit just to maintain a care continuum during times when people are forced to be at home, I think we're really we're humbled, we're grateful, and just so honored to be a part of this past year. In December of 2019, just to kind of put it in perspective, we had an average of 10 million daily meeting participants. In April of 2020, we had grown to more than 300 million daily meeting participants. So I'm not good enough at math to know how many times, but 10 to 300 in a span of a few months is really significant. And I would like to believe that Zoom stayed true to our mission of making communications frictionless and secure. I think that's, you know, really why it was adopted so freely. Our vision of video communications empowering people to accomplish more. I think we saw amazing efforts of net new businesses, people shifting, you know, retail becoming online. So it was just really amazing to see our value of caring for our community, our customers, our company, and ourselves. And then our culture is simply delivering happiness. And I think in a year of a lot of things that maybe didn't deliver happiness, I think Zoom had an opportunity to do so.
No, that's great. And I want to pick up, Heidi, on the statistic that you shared, the 10 million to 300 million participants in Zoom type calls. So in healthcare, as you know, we saw the same sort of acceleration and adoption when it came to traditional telemedicine video visits. And we saw, so an average of all the different studies I've seen had us at less than 1% as an industry pre-pandemic, and we hit a high watermark early on at about 60 some percent. Again, average, some were much higher, some were a little bit lower. And since that time, we've gone down and sort of the new floor is about 15%. So I was personally surprised because I thought it would remain a lot higher. But as one of my good friends told me, he said, look, Ed, it's 15 times more than what it was, which is quite substantial. So definitely stay on the optimistic side. What do you think is going to happen in the future? Do you think we hit sort of that low watermark and we're going to see things slowly increase, maybe not to pandemic level of utilization, but where do you sort of see the future in terms of adoption and where that new floor might be of the percent of visits that are done virtually?
Yeah, I think and I appreciate your statistics. You know, we all see something a little different, but I think the low to super high to, you know, not as low, but still kind of low. I really do believe it's going to rise again as some of the regulatory questions get defined, what the long-term strategy will be for telehealth. You had your 31 emergency orders during this past year, and I think people are trying to understand what that might look like, what compensation and pay parity might look like long-term. And I do believe from a specialty perspective, trying to figure out what makes sense virtual versus in person. There's always going to be a need for in person, but if you look at the HFMA financial sustainability report, it actually shows that physician revenue on a 4-hour telehealth block was 22% higher than revenue on a similar office block. Yeah. So if you're even looking at this from a cost perspective, or you're looking at ways to enhance experiences and augment with maybe PAs or nurse practitioners, there is an opportunity to leverage virtual visit. And our recommendation is when you're thinking of different kinds of care, have a video first, a virtual first mentality. And in that way, if you build different KPIs and track the difference between your in-office and virtual visits, you'll know which specialties or which kinds of patient encounters make sense and might be financially advantageous to shift to a virtual model.
Yeah, a couple things that you said, Heidi, that really resonated with me. And when we talk about how, okay, we've reached a floor, but we'll see it increase, completely agree. And you mentioned some of the motivators to make that happen. The other one, and you touched on it, but I just want to amplify it a little bit more, is the experience, is the patient experience. So we got to high watermark out of necessity, and anyone was willing to accept anything thrown out there that was a video visit. I'll take it, whether it's FaceTime or whatever. But now that things have settled down a little bit, at least in North America, the patient again is going to demand much more convenience and a much better experience. And I think as we get better at that as an industry and taking this patient centricity sort of framework point of view, I think it'll come down to the experience. And so the more seamless and frictionless and all those sort of things we can make that experience is going to help drive that back up. Because as you mentioned, the financial incentive is there as well. So it really is all lining up. I think a lot of it too is culture. It's difficult for these organizations that's where I came from. For 100 years, we did it a certain way, and it's hard to that quickly completely flip the model. But we're headed the right direction. And then I think was really profound what you said, because we try to be practical in these webinars. Is like, what can I do if I'm a CDO, CIO at an organization or someone who's responsible for sort of digital or virtual care, is adopt that virtual first mentality, and that'll get you thinking. And again, that's the way the competitors that are coming in and disintermediating healthcare providers today, that's how they think. So if you want to compete with them, you're going to have to think like them and start operating like them. So I just wanted to put that emphasis on what you shared. So we are with Heidi West. She leads healthcare for Zoom, and we are interactive. This is why we do it live. So if you have any questions, feel free to enter those questions, and we'll be sure to try to address as many as we can. So just a reminder there. So Heidi, you have the advantage of speaking to a lot of leaders in a variety of healthcare organizations. What's top of mind? So we're kind of switching more broadly now to the virtual age, medicine and the virtual age. What's sort of top of mind? Because I think the audience will find it really helpful, because sometimes we just talk to maybe a very small peer group, and we don't hear a lot of what's going on outside of that small peer group, if any. So what are you hearing? What are you talking about when it comes to virtual care?
Yeah, and if it's okay, I just want to go back to the last question a little bit. You mentioned competition and you mentioned the consumer, and I think it is really important to not underestimate either. I think the fact that there's a familiarity with the consumer and a comfort and a confidence level, and that we think of competition maybe as just the hospital down the road or maybe some of the big brand names, but you have retail, you have direct to consumer, you have a lot of different people, and they're taking aim at traditional care models. So if you just find yourself reverting back and not taking advantage of the amazing innovation and resilience we saw during COVID, and just kind of allow that to go away, you're going to lose this opportunity to take advantage of the 10 years of digital transformation that happened in 10 months. So I really wanted to jump in there with you and agree, because I think the other thing too, virtual care is not just a doctor in one location and a patient at home. And this is something we're talking about a lot, is it has more to do with taking a step back and determining any communication that happens within your care continuum and determining whether or not can this be enhanced with video? Can it be a different way of communicating? And does it create a familiar and ubiquitous experience throughout somebody's healthcare journey? So it's we had patients that were limited in PPE gear, and a remote visit was doctors and nurses just outside a door, and an iPad and a Zoom call in the patient's room. So it's not just that one thing. It's thinking about virtual throughout the care continuum. So,
yeah, and Heidi, excellent point. And that's the fun thing about being live and having this conversation. we can take it a lot of different places. I'll refresh your memory on the previous question because I have something to add to what you just said. What astounds me, and I'm not pushing, we are, what's the word, unbiased with Digital Voices webinar. We don't endorse a particular vendor or anything like that.
Not at all, yeah.
But what I have to say here is I don't understand why some of my colleagues at health systems will partner with companies that are actually competing against them directly. So I just don't understand it when I speak with them. I was like, do you realize that this company that you're spending a lot of money with and increasing their revenue and their shareholder value, they are also taking your patients, and it confounds me why anyone would do that. Sometimes I don't know that everyone's connected the dots yet, but that's just not good in my mind. And we like to be a little provocative here. That's just not good business practice. So I would just have everyone who's listening and doing all the virtual care, make sure you're not feeding your competitor because it won't be good long term. So let me go back to the question because we took a little segue, which was cool. And that is what else are you hearing? So you have the vantage point of talking to people all over the place, all over the country and the world. What are you seeing? What other best practices are you seeing just beyond sort of the video visit things?
Yeah, I think, if you break it down to its core, that what leaders are thinking about are cost, competition, and care. I mean, but then when you look at cost, there's no question healthcare took a beating last year, and trying to figure out how do you balance your investments with innovation and staying in front of some of these competitors that are creeping into your space while not, you still want to innovate, you still want to learn, but you're in a bit of a challenge with where to invest time. And your point about investing in your competitors kind of feeds into that second piece of it. But when you're looking at an investment, does it span beyond maybe one use case? Does it really allow you to start thinking about virtual and your experience with your patients, whether it's in the room, whether it's remote, patient monitoring at home, whether, if you're investing, make sure that investment serves a lot of needs and fits within the workflows that your providers and your doctors are already living in every day. So cost and competition kind of play hand in hand. And then you mentioned the consumer. We talk about the consumer a lot. When you talk about care is about the consumer in the way, obviously, do we get to finally experience value-based care, and what does that look like? Can we create a better care coordination model? And where do our consumers want to receive care? And, trying to figure out the best way to have the experience in person, but also enhance that experience. So it really, there's a lot of different conversations, innovations, but it comes down to cost, competition, and care, not necessarily in that order, and how you compete those priorities against each other when you're investing in improving the experience.
No, that's great. And that's easy for someone like me to learn. It's basically my 3 C's, cost, competition, and care. I love it. What do you recommend? So this is a sort of recommendation. What would you recommend to leaders who are just now catching their breath? So as we talked about, we had the pandemic infused steep acceleration of everything, and as a result, we leveraged, and appropriately so, anything that we could to enable patient care during this time. And now that things have settled down a little bit, at least in North America, we're able to take a little bit of an inventory now. Okay, we've got these 4 or 5 different things, or maybe more, and we probably should, make sure that we got the experience, those things that we talked about, a good experience, and have a strategy going forward. So, do you have any recommendations for leaders who are in that process or catching their breath and evaluating, like what should they be thinking about long term? Where would you begin? So you probably run into some people that it's like, okay, I need to do something, but I don't know where to start.
Yeah, you're right. And I've heard people tell me I signed a 4-month contract with XYZ company because I just need time, or I did this month-to-month extension on this, because you're right. People are trying to take a step back and figure out, what is my long-term strategic plan around telehealth and virtual care in general? The recommendations that we have are similar to what I said before. Determine what your broader collaboration strategy is and consider partners who are invested and able to support your needs throughout the care continuum. You want to know, you mentioned it earlier with the competition, are there solutions out there and partners that can work with you within your current workflows? Understand how to integrate in the business that you drive today. It's amazing how you can create this innovation while still maintaining these key workflows and processes that are already in place. I think the point solutions are the ones that also, compete directly against. They may solve one thing and they'll say, physicians like it because it's simple, or, they tie onto one piece of it. You want to look for that same physician and consumer frictionless experience, but that still expands beyond that one use case, and make the investments based on that broader communication strategy. What allows for third-party connections? If you're needing interpretive services or want to do remote patient monitoring or want to engage in care coordination in a new way, what kind of things might allow for that? And it's really a matter of thinking about the intersections within care and what strategic partner can help solve for those different pieces along the way. Because, you know better than anyone how many different communications devices or investments or trying to bridge the gap between business and clinical when it comes to your communication systems. If we can streamline that down just to a handful, and maybe you have a business system and a care system, and there's a way to bridge the gap and integrate between the two, or look at who understands this business, knows how to engage with both the consumer and the physician and everyone in between, and make strategic investments that allow for more than just one use case.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about technical debt and application rationalization, and one of the reasons they're not able to do a lot of digital transformation is to call all that legacy debt. If you go back 10 years, the EHR systems, there really weren't a lot of platforms out there. It was a lot of niche. And I never understood that. Like, why would you do that? And so then we had to pay a lot of money to get to a platform. And so we're seeing, I think, the same thing happening now in this whole virtual age, where it's the same sort of thing and people are really struggling. Well, no, I really like, this is the best, this product, this is the best, this product, this, but they don't understand the long-term implications of having so many different products from a patient experience point of view. But again, going back to digital transformation and trying to do transformation when you've got all this technical debt. So I think you're spot on when you talk about, considering, basically the platform and your strategy and how it all works together, the whole continuum. So very, very practical. We are in the home stretch here. And one last time, if you have any questions, we're happy to take those questions. We have been focusing on the provider side, but let's talk about some of our colleagues on the payer side, because digital voices is voices across health and life sciences. Are you working much on the payer side, and are you seeing something similar, or what might be the use cases on the payer side?
Yeah, I'll break them down between payer and life science. From a payer perspective, as we know, some are also delivering care. So any of the ones that are delivering care, I'd say all the same rules apply or opportunities apply. But as a traditional payer, I would encourage the same thought of taking a step back and realizing in every communication intersection with your members, how do you enhance that experience? If it's something as simple as, what are we most frustrated with? It's usually, as consumers, it's usually the claims process, or being able to engage with someone and get something resolved so you don't have to keep calling back. And, is there a way to enhance that experience? We're seeing some of those discussions. Virtual call centers with people that have expertise in those given areas. If you have open enrollment, is there a way to engage? Any of the kind of health and wellness. Payers are trying desperately to engage with their members out in their community. And, what could population health look like from a payer in the way that they do outreach into their given communities and populations? I think and they are a carpeted enterprise in many ways. They act a lot like a lot of the enterprises. So are there ways to collaborate You know, there are probably some people that are considering either a hybrid model or a work from home model, or, you know, somewhere in between. What could that look like, and how do you enhance the experience? So you look at all the engagements with your members, and how can you elevate and expand, and then how can you even make a better experience for the people that work within your own organization. So that's payors. From a life science, we're seeing a lot of interest in remote collaboration. I think one of the most amazing things about COVID last year is how many people shared information. It was you know, hospitals and historically it was more, this is my information. And because of what we were faced, tremendous amount of data and information and research and knowledge was shared. And I think from a life sciences, if you have a clinical trial or different research you're doing, now you can expand your trial population by leveraging, having people do the trial at home and doing remote patient monitoring and engagement in a virtual way. You have the opportunity to collaborate with other labs or other scientists, depending on maybe within your own organization or a collaborative opportunity. Now you don't have to be flying people all over the place for collaboration. So and again, they have a large carpeted enterprise. So they're also trying to figure out, are people going to work from home, come back, or something in between, and taking advantage of the experience to enhance the connectedness between employees and then who they're working with in trials and different research organizations for collaboration.
Yeah, those are great examples on the payer and life sciences point of view, and you can see just the value of everything that we're doing in the virtual age to really advance medicine. Heidi, this has been super insightful. Thank you for being our guest.
Thank you. I'm sorry I couldn't get the video to work.
Yeah, it was. I know we had a good laugh about that, right? We should have been using Zoom. But as I mentioned, you can hear more from Heidi at our upcoming Digital Voices conference in June. And there should be, if you Google it, there it is. You can see what'll be happening. Yeah, we have an upcoming webinar with David Butler where we continue to talk about racism and what we can do about it. But if you Google Digital Voices Conference, you'll find information on that as well. We thank you for taking part of your day to be with us. Hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Thank you, and talk to you soon.
Thank you.